All right, we're talking back about the nip and the aggressive behavior in the bud. Remembering adult temperament usually is hitting somewhere around 3 or 4, 2 for the smaller dogs. What you'll find is that slowly your dog just seems to get it more and more serious as he ages. And as that seriousness comes, that's his adult personality. And what happens is most people are not giving adequate structure to be the leader in their house unintentionally. So we're going to talk about, Patricia McConnell defined it in a seminar, that dominance is who controls the limited resources in the relationship. And you're thinking, limited resources, are we talking about oil? No, we're talking about, for a dog, the limited resources are food, attention, and space. Okay? So, let's give a couple examples of how people lose this. The first and worst, and one of the first ones I talk to everybody in class, the demanding of attention. That's the nose push. That's the paw whack. The bark, stand back and bark at you. It's the jump. It's the anything that you feel is somebody doing this to you, anytime. And you think, but he's just nudging me. Yes, but if he nudged a dominant dog like that, he would probably get in trouble. They'll play with each other. He does not allow new young dogs to come up on him and jump on his back or whack him. He'll kind of position himself, and then when the dog's respectful, then he invites him in with a playbout. He loves to play with other dogs, but he does not allow rude dogs. Okay? And I see people allow their dog to greet other dogs just as rudely. And their dog is pouncing on the other dog's head, and then that dog snaps and they go, oh, he's mean. Okay, let's think about this. Would you like random people on the street coming up and grabbing your butt? No, you would not. So it is not appropriate in people either for things to come overwhelming into your space. When your dog is doing this, that is no different than your spouse going, fetch. And you need to think of it that way to realize how rude it is. The demanding is one of the first way dogs assert leadership. If they can initiate on you, that is their way. I'm not saying I don't pet my dogs. You obviously see me and my dog love each other. But you notice he does not demand. All right? I think that is and I did not do that with his father. And the first 4 years of his father's life were very difficult. I had no self-control on him. When he wanted to do something, he was great, highly intelligent, but when he got in drive mode, I completely lost him. He just zoned me out. And I finally started going, what can I do? And it doesn't, I can pet him as much as I want. I just go, okay, son. I just go, now he earned that versus demanding it. Like this right here is his favorite thing. Enough. I need to be able to turn it on and turn it off and go, yes, that's great, come here. Initiated it. I called him, he came. Okay? That's how initiated. But if you're sitting on the couch and he's jamming that toy into your kneecap over and over and you keep throwing it, you have put yourself as a subordinate. You are now sheep instead of shepherd. And particularly for the herding breeds. When they can make you do, you have become livestock versus the shepherd. And I don't want to give people the impression I'm not loving and affectionate with my dogs. He has to have enough respect of my space and my commodity of attention to not demand it. If you are petting every time they nudge you, you are like a gumball machine that needs no money. They don't have to put anything in and they can get out as much as they want. And then people are shocked when their dogs won't come to them for a good boy. Well, you pet him anytime he wants. Why would he stop chasing a deer to come to you for you to say good boy that he gets for free all the time? Doesn't work that way. So my attention is a limited resource that I go, look what you've earned by being great. Isn't that wonderful? And I let him do that when I don't have treats and stuff, because he loves that. And yes, I wake up and he stares at me. If he were a human, he'd be in jail for being a stalker. But since he's my guardian and my best buddy, you see how he waits for that hand, but as soon as he saw that hand, he's like, oh, Mom. That's all the initiation I need. But how many times do I see people, their dog is just all over them, and that's the dog I was talking about. Like you just couldn't be around her. She was just breathing on you and stepping on you. And you know, with a dog who's fearful, you encourage any interaction at first. But once they understand it's not something negative to be affectionate, then you have to start putting controls on it. You have to understand that in the wild, if a dog had no leadership, they could not organize hunt, they could not organize self-defense. So a dog, lack of leadership equates to death. So if you're not going to be in charge, most dogs don't want to be in charge. Most dogs don't have the confidence to be in charge. And then they make really bad decisions, like who can sit in my chair, and who is allowed to come through the door, and who's allowed to do things. So particularly if you have a dog with not the best confidence, you cannot allow them to run the show. They will. I know a Bouvier that started to set a curfew. I've seen dogs that won't allow certain people to sit on pieces of furniture. We all know the Chihuahua that won't let somebody touch their mom, right? I mean, imagine a dog that's a large size setting those kind of parameters and rules. But dogs in the absence of structure will set structure. Not all dogs. Some dogs are the kind of dogs that out in the wild that would just die because they have no survival skill. They're the best pets. They just walk around going, somebody will take care of me, yay! And then you have some dogs that go, decisions need to be made. The more serious dogs, and all your working dogs, herding dogs are geared naturally to have to think and perform, and to think on their feet. But they are also bred to take direction. That's why one of the most difficult dogs to live with often is a Siberian Husky. Why? Because we've bred them for hundreds of years for us to look at their butt while they pull a sled, and that is what they do best. They love to run, and they love to run away from you, and by nature they're relatively independent and don't need you. So they take a lot of early on work, okay? Because they think, whereas these dogs are more designed to work with us. But the more survival-oriented, because that's really what I think of dominance as, survival mechanisms. How good would they be at surviving in the wild, at dealing with everything? Would they be able to take a pack and run it, and successfully? That's really what dominance is. It's who is in control of every relationship, okay? So we've talked about attention, space. How do dogs control sheep? By controlling the space around the sheep. One of the things I see all the time, dogs jump, and what is people's natural response usually when dogs jump? Take a step back to catch your balance, right? The second you gave space, you became the subordinate. That's like ducking away. I'm not saying you're not supposed to kick them or anything like that, but watch when I step at him. I shouldn't be able to bump him. As I move, and horses the same way, you need to have the space respect, right? No horse with space respect, that's dangerous. And I think that's where you constantly hear you can't treat your horse like a dog. If you allowed your dog to be rude, of course you couldn't treat a 1,000-pound animal that way. Okay. But I should be able to, all right, that's controlling space. But if he's jumping on me and I step back, I control space.
So what do you do when they jump on you?
First thing I do is teach, I'll almost always teach what's called a mutually exclusive behavior, meaning he can't pressure and do the other behavior at the same time. So first I teach him move, so I taught him this move first. But once I teach move, the more he comes at me, you'll find that most dogs, when you start stepping forward at them, go, ooh. It's very quick, they go, ooh. So as soon as my dog's thinking about crowding me, I step right in and use my move command. And if I have to, I'll use a little candy spray. It's surprising how good candy spray works. It's a little spray right in front when we get a sniff. But the worst thing people do is this. Their dog jumps on them, and they push, or they do this. They grab by the collar and go, no. I'm not going to really say that because I asked him to jump up. But now if I'm doing this, what's he doing? Do you see the more I push, what's he doing? He's pushing back because it's play initiation. Pushing, see? Look what happens when I push. Pushing is play initiation. So the more you push him off, the more he's going, oh, Dad or Mom loves this game. So first thing you do, you've got to understand that your attention, watch what I do when I don't want to be bothered. Turn my face. Let me grab a chair. Enough. Face. How many times do I have to fuss in class because as you guys are correcting your dog, they're doing something you don't like, you're looking at them. You're talking to them. If a dog is pushy and strong like mine, he'd rather take a correction and get attention than be ignored. So you have to understand all these little keys when I control attention. Okay? Okay. Can give as much attention as I... Enough. Eyes away. Okay? We'll talk about that more. But if your dog is the one eyeballing you and forcing behavior, you have become livestock, not the shepherd. Okay? Again, you don't have to say, oh, he can't ever put his feet up on my lap. I let my dogs do that. But they have to say, when I say move or enough, it has to be done. They lay on my bed, but that's because I can go, let's get up, and they all get off. Or if I say off, they move. But you can't have them do that and you try to get them off or push them down and you're trying to push them, then you have a dog who is not yet letting you control space. Okay? And these are how dogs work out who's in charge. And this is why people doing things like alpha rolls and stuff are very not encouraged. Because if you allow all these things to go by and then you try to snatch your dog up and punish him, what do you think is likely to happen? If you've moved out of his way, you've given him attention when he wanted, you give him food when he wants, who does he think's in charge? Him, right? And now you try to physically put a punishment on a dog who thinks he's in charge. What's he likely to do? Oh, he is very definitely likely to bite you. And I've seen lots of people, you have to, that's why I tell people, you cannot, people say, well, how do I correct this? Well, we started by fixing all this first. Because if you don't fix that, and you try to do punishments without changing that underlying behavior first, and the wrong temperament, you will get tagged. So the first step you do is establish, I get to control these elements. And now that I can control these elements, now I feel okay to pressure into you. But I can tell you from experience, you don't want to take a space-aggressive dog and try walking on top of him. Because I've had serious bite cases that will bite you. And I tell you the case that was the most and worst, and this is how it can progress. One, never believe people when they say their dog doesn't bite. I mean, you can trust people you know, but be very careful, especially with your children. Because many of the bite cases I work, the owners are in denial that their dogs bite. I came to work with a neurotic pit bull who was self-mutilating her tail. She was a saint. Nothing wrong with this dog. She's been used as a bait dog in fighting, and she was just nervous. And I look across the room, and I don't dislike Rottweilers, so please don't think I do. I know really great ones. I used to own one. I loved her. She was very safe. But I look across the room at 120 pounds of testosterone named Malachi. And I knew right then that wasn't going to be good. And she didn't name him out of the Bible. It's just from Children of the Corn. So I look at him and he's pushy. From the time I come in, he's all over me. It's right here, and I'm ignoring him. And it's making him angry that I'm not giving him attention. And I can see him start to get frustrated that I'm not paying attention to him, and he turns around and he lets into that poor pit bull. And she goes, oh yeah, he does that sometimes. I'm like, you have your pit bull on Prozac because you think there's something wrong with her. What's wrong with her is that big 120-pound galoot. Anytime he doesn't get what he wants, he attacks the poor little pit bull. So she's spinning and grabbing her tail out of frustration, not because she's crazy, because she's terrified. So I said, well, can you make him move? Come on, Ted. Says he was wonderful and gentle. I said, can you make him move? And she walks around him and goes, yeah, look, see? And I thought, she's afraid of him. So she would walk around him. When he nudged her, she would respond. And he came up and he was very much, he came up here and he stood at me. And I felt, and if you know Rotties, you know, I could feel it coming before he made it, and it was, and I could feel his chest vibrating against my knees. And I thought, okay, if I move back, I'm done. If I push on him, I'm done. If I touch him, I'm done. So I said, I had a hot dog, and I let him see it, and I threw it, and said, move. And as he went to go, he looked back at me like, I can't believe I moved. And then for the next 2 months, that dog had to work for every single piece of food he got. And he is fine. But that dog had bitten her neighbor in the face. That dog had bitten multiple people, and yet she was not honest about it at all. So be very careful. If a dog gives you the heebie-jeebies, go with that. Even if it's a lab or a golden. Because I know many labs and goldens that bite. So please do not go, oh, it's a such and such, they never bite. Watch yourself. If a dog makes you go, ugh, go with that. Don't be, spooky around it, but you might be right. Even if the owner goes, oh no, he's fine. There are some dogs that will seriously bite you, okay? And a lot of it is, and as soon as she fixed these underlying things, her dog was more than happy to give up that rank position. He didn't have the confidence to deal with it. That's why he was so aggressive. Confident dogs I bet your little dog could be in charge and never really be aggressive. Because she's very confident and sweet. She could be pushy and rude, and you could probably let I could let his mother be pushy and rude, and she'd be annoying, but she'd never be aggressive. So you can let some temperaments, but do you really want to chance it? We can't always tell from the puppies. I knew he would be pushy, but you can't always tell. I've seen puppies that I thought were going to be quite soft, that surprisingly in adolescent grew quite strong mentally, and all of a sudden were trying to rise in the ranks. So even the worst case scenario, you want to decrease separation anxiety, right? And so even if it's just annoying, you want to get rid of it, because think of separation anxiety as a lot of this. Think of how often the dog goes up and pokes and you pet. The dog pokes and you pet. Now all of a sudden you leave and he cannot get his attention at his beck and call. That is how separation anxiety begins. He's used to being able to give me this on my terms, and now all of a sudden you've taken it away. That's how separation anxiety usually, not always, but that's often how separation anxiety begins. It's just like women. You might have a box of cake mix in your cabinet for 6 months, but the second you go on a diet, you want it, right? Because now all of a sudden you can't have it at your beck and call. It increases your need for it. Why is that? I don't know, but it works that way. So when a dog is able to control it, and then you leave and he can't control it, that is stressful. So even if your dog isn't going to be dominant and aggressive and rude and in a mean way, it's still not going to help him to over-accommodate in his other things. Okay? You'll create other negative behaviors with that. Same thing goes for food. The dog that at 5 o'clock you normally feed at 5:30, so at 5 they spin in the kitchen. You do not tell me. That's like her looking at you and going, oh, waitress, right? Remember, we are not at their beck and call. I ignore my dogs when they're rude about it. If you're going to be rude and demand and push, I'm not going to put it down. If you're up there scratching at the dog thing, I'm not going to put it down right now. If you're not doing it, I'll put it down at 5 o'clock. But if you're going to start, and I tell you why, there's a client with a corgi, they called me, the corgi's 11 years old. They never thought they had a problem until they got pregnant. If they did not feed the dog on time, she would bite them. And I'm not talking like nip them. She punctures them. And it started small. At first it started with biting, and they thought, oh, that was cute. And so they fed her, and then it progressed and progressed and progressed. They were getting up at 6 in the morning to feed on their Sunday mornings, just like it was a weekday, because if not, she would come in and latch down on them. So you don't want to ever even let behaviors like that begin. Why would you? So you get to control food, attention, and space. Same thing. I eat, you don't demand it. I don't mind if my dogs look at me, that's my personal preference, but I don't like them within my arm range when I'm eating. I want you to be out of my personal space while I'm eating. I think that's reasonable. And in class, we actually sit down on the floor with food, and we want them to be out of our arm zones, even when we're on the floor with them. You should be able to sit in front of the TV with a pizza and not have a dog drooling on your leg or your face or your arm. Those are all things that you should have, okay? So that is how people, pulling on a leash. If your dog's pulling you, who's controlling the space here? He is, right? So that's why when people say, well, leash work has nothing to do with my aggression problem. Oh, yes, it does. You either control food, attention, and space, or you don't. If you're not consistent on those things, you are not clearly in the dominant position. And by dominant, I just purely mean leadership position, okay? Pushing past owners at doorways. You're trying to get through the door and they push past you. If you constantly get nipped in the back, not nipped, bit, but pushed past in the back of the knees. You do not have adequate space respect yet, okay? If you cannot take all your animal's food and toys away. Now, I want to tell you, these things get worse with a dog who has gotten in charge, but dominance work alone does not prevent food and object aggression, okay? Okay. Okay, give. Okay, take a bite. Give. Okay. Give. Give. Okay. Even in mid-chew, I want to be able to, I don't have a big hot dog, I would normally do that, because if I let go, he's just going to swallow. I can't ask for it once he's ingested it. I should be able to take anything out of his mouth. He probably won't have this toy here, but... Can you get it? Get it. Get it. Thank you. He should not think anything of giving me his toys, his food, of me being able to walk past him. He was very dominant and food-oriented as a puppy. He tended to be very aggressive about his food, so we worked on it constantly. In the homework sheets that I have, there are ways of how you should just start dealing with it. This is something you should practice from now until your dog's to his adult temperament. Doesn't mean you have to practice it 50 times a day, but this is the one people don't practice. And what do? I ask give, I give him something better, I give the item back. People go, but, I pet him while he's eating. He may be tolerating you, but he might not like it. And what he's willing to tolerate at 8 months and what he's willing to tolerate at 4 is two completely different things. You need to make food as a non-confrontational thing. It's why I also do not punish a dog when he has something in his mouth. He perceives it about the taking, not about the having picked it up. So I am very serious about this. The majority of aggression cases I addressed were this issue. The dog was aggressive around his objects or his food. More bites that I've worked out have happened around that than any other, and several of them were clients of mine as puppies, and I say, well, how long did you continue to practice that exchange thing throughout his adulthood? I practiced it the week of class and then I forgot. And I said, did I not make it really clear when we taught it that it was something you needed? Yes, but he wasn't aggressive, so I thought it was fine. This is the one thing that submissives in the pack will often attempt to guard their food from other dogs. Okay? So in the dog world, it's not really negative to try to defend your food. So it's real important that you go out of your way to make interaction, especially when you have children, or you have grandchildren, or you have your dogs in situations around a lot of new people. You want your dog to not, as soon as you see this hunkering, or if your dog is one of those dogs that when he gets something, he runs with it, and he's young, know that in a year or two that could mean, see, he doesn't think you being around his objects is good. So in a year or two that could turn into aggression. So I do everything I can to prevent this. There is nothing at my house I cannot take from my dogs. When I first met my husband, he had a son, and Blade is very tough. And he had not been raised around children other than in class. And I saw my husband, who doesn't think, give him a deer leg on a deer he was cleaning. And I saw my stepson reach down to pet him through the window. And all I could think was, I hope I've done adequate work. Because Blade had never had a raw deer bone. And I saw his eyes like, oh my gosh, look what I'm getting. And my stepson went to kiss him on the face. And he wagged his tail and was happy about it. But that's just from preparation, because his natural temperament would have been to be guarding. Never call your dog to you and do anything he perceives as negative. It's the same thing as going to him and punishing him when he has something in his mouth. But how often do I see people do this? Come, you bad, bad boy. I'm thinking, well, why would you call him to him? If I said, come here, smack. Every time I said, come here, he would avoid me. So you cannot, but that's obvious, right? But if my dog is over there doing something wrong, I go over there and correct it. I don't call him to me, because now I'm punishing him for the coming to me. Remember, the reinforcement and the corrections happen at the time they're doing it. What were they doing when you did that? If my dog is growling at somebody, or he's afraid of thunder, and I go, it's okay. we think we're soothing. But what is he doing and what am I doing? He's being scared and I'm doing what? I'm praising him. So I'm saying, yes, I love that behavior. So if your dog is afraid of people and you praise him for it, he is going to think, oh, mom and dad says that's good that I'm afraid of people, I'll do it more. So it's punishments and corrections, it's so important of the timing. Okay? You have to know exactly what you're correcting and praising. Because most of the time it's not what you think. Pat Pirelli has a good thing for this. He goes, horses are like computers. They don't always do what you want, but they always do what you tell them to do. Right? They always do what with your body language or your stuff you're telling them to do, but it's rarely what you're actually wanting. It's very important that you always think, this behavior, do I like it? And am I responding accordingly because of it? Okay? So I want to real quickly remind you of that. But people, oftentimes, they don't punish their dog in their mind, but how often do they go, come, stick them in the crate. Come, put them back on leash. Come, let me put you in the bathtub. When we want to pet them, we go, smoochy, moochy, moochy, come here. But when we need them because we've lost control or we want to do something to them, then we whip out the come word. Well, instead, I have a toy I want to play with. Dog, come. Yes, look what you earned. I have my attention. Dog, come. Yes, look what you learned. So they go, man, I love that word. When I've had my dog playing out with a group of dogs, I call him, reinforce him, and let him go back and play. If come means the end of the game, and every time you call him, you're going to put him back up or take him away from the fun stuff, of course he's going to hate it. It's like kids that don't want to come in for dinner. Do they hate to eat? No, they hate that dinner signified the end of the fun. If you went out on the sidelines of the game and offered them hot dogs, they'd eat those up, right? Because dinner wouldn't indicate the end. Horses, to relate this to horses, first thing I did with my baby Casper when I got him, because you couldn't catch him, I'd call him and then let him go. And he'd go, oh, that doesn't mean like the death grip is going to happen and something horribly scary is going to happen? So I go out to work with my horses, catch the baby, reinforce him, and then send him back out on his way. And he goes, man, that was great. And it works. I mean, they're on 10 acres. They don't have to come to me. And I did it the other day. I turned them loose where we were boarding. And their fence has habitually been down. My horse was not mine, but my husband's horse was in the neighborhood across the street. And it's a 55-mile-an-hour road because the fence was down. So I was not happy. Well, we fed our horses, put them back out in the field just 2 weeks ago. We're driving home and I see a paint horse, and I have a paint horse. And I'm like, oh, not my paint horse though, it's the other paint horse in the field, but they're loose next to the road. So I drive back, and my horses have just been fed, so they've eaten as much as they want to eat, and were put out. So I thought, man, I hope they come. So I went out there, Casper, come. Even though he'd just eaten, he was like, sure, no problem. So when he came, Cherry came, and Nemo was all the way in the back. And the mud was like this thick, and my husband goes, well, once they get over the hump, he can't really hear you. So my husband went to the fence line right where he could hear over the hump, and he's from here to here to the opening of the fence. And he goes, Nemo, come! Nemo eyeballed it, and right back, and came back. Instead of going out of the fence, he came right back, because he went, oh, that's nothing bad. She's probably going to do something nice for me. I'm probably going to earn a cook, and get put back out anyway. And that's what we did. He got a cook, and we put him back in the other pen where we closed the gate. So it works for all the species the same. You want to make being with you the most fun it can possibly be. And you don't have to do that purely with food. It's whatever play your animal likes. He likes to tug, he likes to fetch, he likes to be petted, he likes to do that kissy thing. So I let him do those things when he comes to me. And that is how you build that reliable recall. And yes, sometimes you have to put a correction in when they don't. Because some dogs look at you and go, and that's just how it is. You know, some people do that. And with horses, you sometimes have to put pressure on them in the round pen when they do that and go, okay, you're going to stick your tongue out at me, you've got to work. Right? It's the same concept. It's just with dogs we have better equipment. Can't really use a remote collar too well on a horse, but the idea of it works because that's how fences, the electric fences work too. Just not nearly at the same dosage for the dogs. Correction should be applied in a level where it's enough to stop the behavior, but not enough to kill confidence. So the idea of putting an electric collar on a dog and just until it is not really what you're looking for. You're looking for enough for them to go, you did it? You touched me over here?